Hello, Reformed mythologist Nate Morgan-Locke here with a video about a viral tweet. It makes me queasy even to admit that, but a few days ago this tweet by @CairoASmith was all over my timeline. Literary agent told me that teens can't read third-person omniscient anymore. John Hamm is exasperated, and it's all your fault, teenagers, with your crazy obsession over I, me pronouns. Now, first of all, we're going to break down the tweet and then dive into the genuinely fascinating discussion around narrative perspective. So first, the tweet itself. What do we notice about this sentence? Literary agent told me that teens can't read third-person omniscient anymore. Well, first off, we meet a literary agent. Bing! Third person. And then the verb told. The literary agent is a storyteller. That's what storytellers do. They tell things. That's what stories are. They are told things. But then, boom! Here comes the shift. Me. We discover in this fourth word that this is a first-person narration. The literary agent told CairoSmith, and he's telling us, which means CairoSmith is the real storyteller here, and the literary agent is sitting in a frame narrative. We'll come back to that later, but I hope you're realizing already that studying literature is fun. Right, so what is the story within the story? What did the literary agent tell CairoSmith? He told him that teens can't read third-person omniscient anymore. So this story now involves 3 levels. CairoSmith, the literary agent, and the teens who can't read third-person omniscient anymore. And arguably, by making this video, I have added a 4th layer. Me, CairoSmith, the literary agent, and the teens. How deep does this rabbit hole go?
Goodbye, Dinah. Goodbye.
We've now come to the heart of the story. These teens who can't read third-person omniscient. CairoSmith could simply have stated this as a fact. Teens can't read third-person omniscient anymore. But instead, he told us a story about his interaction with a literary agent. He drew us in with a narrative. All right, enough of this discussion of the form. Let's get into the content. Okay, so can't is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this tweet. It's stronger than prefer not to or won't. It suggests that they are actually incapable of understanding books which are written in this voice. But just to make sure we understand the tweet, let's just clarify what is meant by third-person omniscient. It means that the characters in the story are all referred to in the third person unless using direct speech. It means that the narration of the story is essentially invisible. So that deals with the third person, but what about this omniscient question? Well, omniscient basically just means all-knowing. Omniscient. Science, knowledge, omni, all the knowledge. The person telling the story has all the knowledge, both inside the characters' heads and outside. But the big question about this tweet is why? Why can't teens read third-person omniscient anymore? And this is where we fill in the blanks. We're not told why they can't. We're simply told that this is the case. Now, the final word of this single-sentence story gives the time frame. Anymore. The implication is that things have changed. Teens used to be able to read third-person omniscient, but now they can't. Something has presumably happened to bring this about. The question is, what? Is it the rise of the internet, of social media, of video games, iPhone, YouTube, TikTok? Okay, that last one doesn't work, but it appears that TikTok is having a major impact on the reading habits of teenagers right now. Just go into your local Waterstones and you'll see. There's a lot here about main character syndrome. The retreat into the self as the only reliable location of truth. If I'm not the embodiment of the main character, I don't care. One final general point to make about this tweet is that it is anecdotal, and that's fine. But it's not based upon empirical data. There hasn't been a mass study or statistical analysis done here. Now, we could argue that the literary agent is far better placed than most of us to make such a claim, as monitoring trends in reading is an essential part of their job. But it's still anecdotal from CairoSmith. But let me say that this tweet does not actually need to be statistically accurate to be useful. I have no idea how representative this tweet is, how accurately it maps on to the reality of teenage reading. But at another level, I don't really care. I'm interested in the study of storytelling, and so this tweet simply unlocked a door into a fascinating aspect of the art. We have third-person storytelling and we have first-person storytelling. But which is better? And can you have one without the other? Do you need both? Now back to that word anymore. This needs to be handled carefully. It locates the issue of teenage reading in a view of history. Are we marching forwards and progressing, or have we fallen from a civilizational peak? Let's explore the pessimistic route, partly because I think that's the one which accounts for the tweet in the first place. Teenagers today have been made less capable because the world is getting progressively worse. It actually says something about our inability to understand reality if this is the case. If we've moved from objective truth, third-person omniscient, to the purely subjective, first-person storytelling, then our capacity to really learn anything genuinely meaningful about the world has been destroyed. If everything is just a matter of perspective, it means we are genuinely post-truth. Once we start to use the phrase your truth, we lose the truth as a meaningful concept. It's a terrifying prospect that an overemphasis on first-person storytelling leaves young people ignorant of events and meaning beyond the individual's encounter with them. Have today's teenagers been so miseducated that the vast majority of great literature written in the third person is actually impenetrable for them? And not just literature, but history. If the only sources which have validity are first-hand accounts of the individual's experience, then we can never understand what has genuinely happened in the world. But a word of warning to any Christians pursuing this pessimistic approach with too much zeal. Be wary of saying, the good old days. The Bible itself warns us against such an approach. Ecclesiastes 7 verse 10 says, "Do not say, why were the old days better than these? For it is not wise to ask such questions." That's not to say that standards can't slip, that literacy rates can't stagnate or decline. We're not locked into a static view of things as Christians, and we're aware of graphs which go up and graphs which go down. It's fair to say that the simple ability of teenagers to have a basic comprehension of what the ink on the page means, that literacy in the West is ludicrously high taken against global and historical levels, but we may be experiencing an unhealthy trend towards a real lack of literacy when it comes to understanding the text in front of us. Really reading and understanding the text. Let's talk about frame narrative. Forrest Gump has one. So does How to Train Your Dragon, and Shawshank Redemption, and The Princess Bride, and this episode of Bluey. We see countless examples in which we're introduced to a character who then takes over the storytelling. It's in fact the structure of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. We have a story told by 3 different characters, each one introducing the next. There's also the option of making that shift a surprise. It can lead us to reevaluate the whole of the story. A brilliant and fairly recent example of this would be Taylor Swift's Last Great American Dynasty. We hear the story of Rebecca Harkness moving to a big house in a new neighborhood and then discover that this property is now owned by Taylor herself. Madness. Now, part of the atmosphere in this original tweet was the idea that teenagers today are incurably self-absorbed, to the extent that they struggle to understand stories written from an objective point of view. But this isn't a new thing. The human heart has struggled with the deification of the self forever. We have, as Martin Luther taught us, turned in on ourselves. We have been this way since Eden. This is the nature of sin. Incurvatus in se. But we've not just turned in on ourselves. We're suspicious of the storytellers. We're all too aware of the unreliable narrator. We could trace this back to Lyotard's famous maxim that the heart of postmodernism is incredulity towards meta-narratives, but here 2 questions arise. Haven't humans always been encouraged to doubt their creator? And secondly, aren't today's teens now meta-modern rather than postmodern? The first of these can be affirmed when we read that Satan's first words in Scripture are, "Did God really say?" The deconstruction of the official version of events is nothing new, but it might be diabolical. And the second question about metamodernism and postmodernism can be answered by the fact that metamodernism has inherited the suspicion of postmodernism. And it's only updated it with the sense that we have to trust someone, so it may as well be the individual with their lived experience. To hell with objective claims, you make heaven a place on earth, or rather, my personal experience is all that matters. The solution to all this, as you might expect from a reformed mythologist, is the true story of the person of Jesus. We need to discover truth with a capital T. And this truth is Christ himself. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. We need an approach to literature which makes sense of the objective and the subjective, that holds together the reality out there and the reality in here. Well, I think that's the bell for the end of class, but let me finish by giving you some homework. You might want to check out the 321 course. It's made by Speak Life. It unpacks a lot more of what I was saying about life from the perspective of Jesus. You can sign up for free today at 321course.com. All right, that's it. Please do remember that media consumption is optional. You are under no obligation to read novels written in the third person by omniscient narrators, but it may harm your case if you can't. I'm Reformed mythologist Nate Morganlock. I'm glad you were here.